Hello, and welcome to The Need for Evaluations. My name is Tammy Joya, and I am the presenter and the advocate. The question we're going to be asking is why do children need to be evaluated? What is the purpose, and how can it help your child? Um, so, what we really do have to look at is the regulations that protect your children, and one of the major regulations is IDEA, and that is a federal law, and it was specifically created to protect children with disabilities from public school systems. Um, the reason why it's so important is that the evaluations determine one, if your child is eligible for specially designed instruction in the public school system or special education, or maybe a 504. And if so, then the IEP is developed or 504 is developed. So it is the tool that's used to determine if your child needs special education services. And without it, then your child will not be able to meet or access the general curriculum, which is very important. Remember that phrase, access the general curriculum. Now, when the school district does testing, they also have to evaluate in all areas of suspected disability. And there's a whole law on that about why they have to do it. They can't just limit it to just the classroom or just math or just socially, but not emotionally. They have to do everything on the kid, because if your child's not receiving an education and they're frustrated, it could show up behaviorally. It could hurt their self-esteem. It could hurt them psychologically deeply because they constantly feel like a failure. So that's why they have to evaluate in all areas of suspected disability. Okay, so here is the exact law. It's the evaluation procedures. So this evaluation procedures tells you exactly what the school district has to use. For instance, number one, it says use a variety of assessment tools and strategies to gather functional, developmental, and academic information about the kid. These regulations are very specific as to what the school district can do and not do. For instance, number three says use technically sound instruments. A technically sound instruments is something that has what's called psychometrics. So it's been tested. Like, I don't know if you've ever heard of it before, but it's called the WISC 4. Well, I mean, sorry, the WISC 5. It's an instrument that has been deemed valid and reliable by the American Psychological Association and other entities that determined that these tools are technically sound to measure what your child's ability is, as far as intellectually, as far as in math, as far as socially, emotionally, behaviorally. So they can't just use their eyeballs and say, well, I saw him yesterday and this is how he looked. And yeah, that's their personal opinion. We can get 15 people in a classroom and come up with 15 different observational opinions about what they saw with your child. And so that the technically sound instrument removes all of the personal biases that a teacher or an evaluator may have about your kid. So that's why the instruments have to be technically sound. So if they can't provide you with that information or can't demonstrate that it's technically sound, then it's not good. And you will definitely have a way out of that. And I'll go into independent evaluations and how all of that works and in one of my other trainings. But for right now, to get to this page, all you really have to do is type into your browser 34 CFR 300.304, and it'll take you to the IDEA website. So that's all you have to do. Okay, so here is the exact law. It's the evaluation procedures. So this evaluation procedures tells you exactly what the school district has to use. For instance, number one, it says use a variety of assessment tools and strategies to gather functional, developmental, and academic information about the kid. These regulations are very specific as to what the school district can do and not do. For instance, number three says use technically sound instruments. A technically sound instruments is something that has what's called psychometrics. So it's been tested. Like, I don't know if you've ever heard of it before, but it's called the WISC 4. Well, I mean, sorry, the WISC 5. Um, it's an instrument that has been deemed valid and reliable by the American Psychological Association and other entities that determined that these tools are technically sound to measure what your child's ability is as far as intellectually, as far as in math, as far as socially, emotionally, behaviorally. So they can't just use their eyeballs and say, well, I saw him yesterday and this is how he looked. And yeah, that's their personal opinion. We can get 15 people in a classroom and come up with 15 different observational opinions about what they saw with your child. And so that the technically sound instrument removes all of the personal biases that a teacher or an evaluator may have about your kid. So that's why the instruments have to be technically sound. So if they can't provide you with that information or can't demonstrate that it's technically sound, then it's not good. And you will definitely have a way out of that. And I'll go into independent evaluations and how all of that works in one of my other trainings. But for right now, to get to this page, all you really have to do is type into your browser 34 CFR 300.304 and it'll take you to the IDEA website. So that's all you have to do. Okay, so the evaluations is it is psychoeducational, it's IQ testing, and that testing covers broad scores in reading, comprehension, and math. However, there are more areas than that to evaluate a student to determine if that child has some type of learning disability or other issues that are interfering or hindering how they're accessing the general curriculum. So they will do what I refer to as a cookie cutter approach, and it's psychoeducational. So it would include a psychological and educational and IQ testing. But you might need OT, PT, and speech and language. You might need, if you have a child that has that's exhibiting behavioral issues, you're going to need a functional behavioral assessment. And so the psychoeducational and the IQ testing doesn't really cover that in depth. And that's what you need done. And broad scores are not the same as an in-depth reading assessment. And there are actual reading assessments that go into detail about what your child understands when they're reading. What are they reading? And there's all different areas for reading. It's just not reading like the layperson may think of reading. And it's just not comprehension the way we, the layperson, may look at comprehension. And math is just the same. The best thing that I can give to you as an example of how in-depth it is, just look at your kid's report card. The top column will say math, but then there's all of these subcategories that your child has to demonstrate that he knows from grade to grade under math. It's not just math. It's math concepts, it's math reasoning, it's adding, subtracting, multiplying, dividing. It's understanding words, word problems. So reading and math, all of that is in depth. And you can break it down. All you have to do is look at your kid's report card. So when you go to the school and you say to the school that you want your kid evaluated, the best way to do it, to make sure that the school understands that you know they have to evaluate in all areas of suspected disability, is just look at your kid's report card and take all of those sections for each of the core subjects and tell them I want my child evaluated in all these areas. Now, for social and emotional and behavioral, the best way to do that is to tell them that you want a functional behavioral assessment across all settings, home, school, and community. And the reason why it's all three of those is because children act differently depending on the structure of a program. So your child may act really, really good if he's in the confines of a classroom where he understands the rules. But when your child is in the hallway, He's running around acting all crazy, not following the teacher's direction, not listening, not paying attention. And when he's out at recess, he's running all over the place. He's not staying where he's supposed to stay. And again, he's not listening to the teacher. Lunch, the bus, home. When you take him out in the community, he's touching everything in the stores. So that's why you have to get the kid evaluated as a functional behavioral assessment across all environments, across all settings. And that's what you call a comprehensive evaluation in all areas of suspected disability. And the school district has to give you an answer. And they only have two answers, yes or no. Whenever you ask the school district to do an evaluation, those are the only two answers they get. They don't get anything else. And if they don't evaluate in those areas, or they say they don't want to, they have to put it in writing. They have to tell you why they're not going to do it, that they're refusing to evaluate in all of the areas that you requested. And it's okay. Don't panic. Don't get angry. Don't get anything, because there's a response. You have recourse when they say no. And remember, every time you ask the school district for something, they have to put it in writing if they're going to refuse you. You make them. And if they don't, you put it in writing and you send it to them. And all you have to do is say, pursuant to our conversation today, I asked you this, and your response was no. However, today I haven't received any notice from you telling me that you're refusing to act upon my request. So that's what you do, and there's a reason for it. And if you guys don't get anything else out of my trainings, understand this. The paper trail is your best friend. Everything you do in writing. If they say something to you, you put it in writing and you send it to them. The paper trail is your best friend. Okay, so my goal today was to demonstrate and to show you what the areas of assessment should be if you believe or know that your child has a disability. So the first thing you have to do is get the evaluations done to prove it. And when the student is evaluated, they have to be evaluated in all areas of suspected disability. Now, here's an easy way, like I stated before, to do that is to use your child's report card. And the report card has all of the areas of suspected disability within it. For instance, if you look under math in your child's report card, it'll say math. It'll say adding, subtracting, multiplying, and dividing. That's called math fluency in all of those areas, math fluency. But then it takes it to the next level, math concepts, math reasoning, analyzing. So all of the areas that's in your child report cards under math, you want all of those subcategories. That's what you tell the school district you want evaluated. And you do that in every single subject area, okay? You tell them you want all of these areas because each one of those areas tells you what your child can do and tells you what your child can't do. So the easiest way is for math. Now, you're going to get into areas like social studies and science. And the areas in those types of classes will be mostly about reading and comprehension, okay? So the subcategories may not be so much about reading and comprehension, but those are the words you want to look for in those subcategories. So basically, when it comes to those, you want to make sure that your child can follow directions, can read and follow the directions, and then execute what the directions said. Okay, you want to make sure that what your child is reading and what your child is doing is what the directions say for him to do. How much help are you giving your child after school? If there's a line between actually helping your child and then doing the homework, okay? And if your child is getting better homework grades than he is in classroom, that means you're giving way too much help. You need to stop, because if you don't stop, what's going to happen is that his grades are not going to be fairly represented. It's going to look like your child is doing way better than he really is. The only reason why your child may be doing that well is because of you sitting right next to him, almost doing his homework for him. So you have to stop doing that. There's help, and then there's doing it for them. You have to know where that line is, okay? But other than math, if you look on the report card, you want to look for words like I said, can he follow directions? Can he follow verbal directions? Can he follow written directions? And can he execute those directions and to complete the task? That's what you want to do for all of the reading, all of the other classes. For social, emotional, and behavioral, what you want to look at on the report card is your child's conduct and effort. Okay, that'll give you an insight as to, if your child has any friends, if he's a loner, if he's angry all the time, if he is always running to the nurse whenever the work gets hard, or he's always getting in trouble, and that's called task avoidance. So, and that's a behavioral problem also. So social, emotional, and behavioral all come, really, you can get a lot of stuff out of a functional behavioral assessment um, regarding those three issues. But those three issues on the report card will be conduct and effort. Okay. And then you want to look at the teacher's notes, what the teacher said about your kid all year. What did your teacher say? He was wonderful to be in the class, but what? Okay, look at those buts. Why? I don't mean look at the buts, but you know what I mean. Look at what the teacher is writing. So about your child and the difficulties the teacher saw, or the difficulties the teacher had with your son. For instance, blurting out information, not sitting in his seat, constantly moving around the classroom. Those, by the way, are all things that a child with ADD would do. Yeah, children with ADD don't sit still ever. They're constantly fidgeting. They're talking out of turn. They're blurting out information. They're dropping pencils. They're forgetful. They don't remember to do their homework. They're disorganized. All of those things, those are all keywords for ADD. So you can get your child tested for ADD. Now, the other thing is you might want to use your insurance to go get your kid tested and get a neuropsych done. A neuropsychological evaluation will cover all of these areas, and it's way more in depth than what the school's going to do. And you can get your insurance company right now, at least, you can get your insurance company to pay for that. But for the most part, you really do have to allow the district under the law the first bite at the apple. And then you can do what's called an independent. But at any time, you can do and pay for your own evaluations. Now, when you do, and if you pay for your own evaluations through your insurance or out of pocket, and you read that evaluation and it's not good, and it shows that your child needs help in school, that's the evaluation you bring to the school. Within 10 days of receiving it, they have to have a meeting to discuss the results. So that's what you have to do. If you use your child's report card as a stepping stone, now as I go through my trainings, you'll learn more. And so you'll step away from the report card, and I'll teach you what to look for when you want your child assessed, and what are the cues that say, I think my child needs help. 9 times out of 10, I'm going to tell you, like I just told a parent before, you guys already know this. You know your child needs help. You just don't know how to ask for it. You don't know when to ask for it. And you don't know what to ask for. You just don't. I'm going to teach you how and what and why. Okay. So part of this training was about what's the purpose of the testing. So you get your child tested, and what happens then? Well, the purpose of the test is to get your kid the supports and services that your child may need in a particular area, or in all areas. I don't know. But that's the purpose of the testing, because without the testing, you can't get the services. So you have to understand that. And you have to understand that school districts like the one in Dryden, New York, they like to use their opinions. Okay, no, that's illegal. It's illegal. They can't do it. And they like to use RTI. So if your child's on RTI and your child's on tier 2 and the school district hasn't referred your child for special education, they're in violation. Once your child hits tier 2 on RTI, it's because the school district has acknowledged that your child needs help. Okay, that means they suspect your child has academic issues and may have a disability. So that means when your child hits tier 2 and RTI, the district is obligated to refer your child for evaluation. And if they don't, and they put your child on tier 2, then you do it. And all you have to do is go get the tier 2 book, or the RTI book, I'm sorry, from the school district, and it'll tell you what tier 2 is. It's because your child didn't meet RTI level 1. The services that they gave him in RTI level 1, yeah, when he got to level 2, still didn't make a difference. So now they're going to move him on to level 3. Meanwhile, this takes a whole school year. Every level takes a whole school year. That's a whole school year on RTI, which, by the way, is not special education at all, never going to be. And they can't use special education money to for RTI, and they can't use special education money on RTI. RTI is for children who do not have a disability, period. I don't care what they tell you. And if they do, I want you to tell me, because I'm going to send you the letter from the Office of Special Education Programs from the director that said RTI is not special education. And you cannot use RTI to delay the referral process for special education. Okay? That's the first thing I want to get off my chest. The other thing is, okay, you have to sign consent in order to get the testing done. So you ask for the evaluations. Now they have to give you what's called informed consent. Now, consent is so important in the federal regulations that it's actually listed 537 times in virtually every topic of the idea. There's 307 pages of RTI, and consent is listed 537 times everywhere, all through it. It's that important, okay? Informed consent means that they have to tell you what they're going to test your kid in. They have to tell you all the areas. I just had a school in Philadelphia decided that they called informed consent. We're going to test your kid. We're going to do an evaluation on your kid using the idea. That's not informed consent. Informed consent means that they have to tell you the areas they're going to evaluate your child in. And then if you want to, because of those areas will be psychological, academic, and all of that, you get to talk to the evaluators to find out exactly what the test is going to do. What is its purpose? The testing instruments that they're going to use on your kid. That's informed consent. If the consent form does not list all of the evaluations in all of the areas that they're going to do not sign it. Send it back and tell them to give you informed consent. Tell them you want to know the areas the evaluation is going to include. Because what if your child has OTPT, speech and language, your child has a psychological assessment for social, emotional, behavioral, and academic testing? You can't just write that nonsense in there. That's not informed consent if you don't know what they're testing and you're agreeing to this. But let's say hypothetically that happened to you. Okay, good. So now what you did is you can go and you can get an independent evaluation at public expense because they didn't provide you with informed consent. Okay, 9 times out of 10, the reason why they won't give you informed consent and tell you about all the testing, and I swear this just happened, is because they're going to choose what areas. And you know what that means? They're going to choose the areas that either will show limited amount of deficits. So that means limited amount of money. All of this is about money. You would think this money was coming out of their own pockets. It's not. But that's why they won't do it. So informed consent is needed. They need to tell you everything they're doing. Is going to be a speech and language pathologist doing a speech and language evaluation? And if so, what is that a speech and language pathologist tools? What are the instruments that speech and language pathologist is going to use on your child? What's the OT going to use? Okay? There's a bunch of testing instruments that are valid and reliable. They don't get to say, well, we sat them down and we asked them a few questions and that's the testing. No, that's not the testing. It's not the testing. Informed consent is important. You have to know what they're doing. You have to ask questions. Don't be afraid. And if you're afraid, call me. I'm not afraid. I love that when they tell me something silly. Now, once you sign consent, they got 60 days to get it all done and have a team meeting to discuss the results. Okay? That's 3 and 4. Okay? So they got 60 days to do all of the assessments. After they do all of the assessments, they got 60 days, not only to do the assessments, to have the team meeting to discuss the results of all of the testing. Okay? Now, 4 is the determination of eligibility. After they do all of the testing, after you've given them consent, informed consent, they got 60 days, they schedule the team meeting, you show up. Now they have to take those results and they have to determine eligibility. Is your child eligible for special education? And if not, is your child eligible for a 504 plan, which is all accommodations. And accommodations is like he sits closer to the teacher, he sits where there's limited distractions, he gets a weighted vest, he gets weighted pencils and crayons, he gets a piece of paper with raised line paper. Those are accommodations. He gets his tests in alternate settings, tests and quizzes. Those are accommodations. So your kid could be eligible for a 504. Your kid could be deemed with a disability and get a 504 instead of an IEP. Okay? A lot of kids that are ADD, they put them on 504s. In my career as an advocate, that's happened twice. I've been doing this for over 20 years. Yeah. Kids with ADD need IEPs, period. So they do the determination of eligibility. Okay, so that's what the testing is all about. It takes us from where we were at the very beginning of this right down to number 4, determination of eligibility. Does your child need supports and services to help them access the general curriculum like everybody else can access it? That's what it's all about. Your child having the same opportunities as his non-disabled peers, but sometimes the only way a child with a disability can do that is with additional supports and services. We live in America. That's what it's about. Everybody being equal. Okay. Let's say hypothetically, the determination was met that your child is eligible for special education services, specially designed instruction, not just accommodation, specially designed instructions. Now, that means your child's eligible for an IEP. Now, here's the cool thing. If your child's eligible for an IEP, your child is also covered under 504, which means when they develop the IEP, they may have to put in accommodations for your kid. But it doesn't work the other way. If your child is eligible for a 504, your child is not automatically eligible for an IEP. So if you're under an IEP, you get both. If you're on a 504, you only get accommodations. Okay? So anyway, now we're going to go to the IEP development. The IEP development is all about goals and objectives, accommodations, services, supports, related services, OT, PT, speech and language, all of that stuff gets discussed. And it gets very detailed. The more detailed, you want your IEP to be as detailed as possible, okay? Because they like to write them ambiguously because it leaves them with an out at the end of the year. And I can't even go into the crazy team meeting I just went into and came out of that. It's an embarrassment that people are in this field and they actually think that what they're telling parents, that's total lunacy, is actually okay to say. And then they meet me and I let them know that's cray-cray. But the IEP development is all about your child. That doesn't have anything to do with the kid, the school district. If they have services, if you ask for a service and the school district says, well, we don't do that here, good, put that in writing. That's illegal. They can't say your kid can't have a service because they don't have it. They have to come up with a better reason than that, or they're going to have to go get it. I've had lots of schools tell me, well, we don't do that here. There's no such thing as we don't do that here. If the team agrees that your child needs it, then the child needs it. So you go around and you say, you're telling me my child doesn't need it? And if they say, well, no, we're not saying that, what are you saying? We don't have it here. That's not a good enough answer. Put that in writing then. That's what you have to tell them. When they say silly things like that, you tell them when you're asking for something and they say to you, we don't do that here, or we don't offer that here, or we don't have a summer program that goes longer than 2 weeks. No, all of that's against the law, okay? Summer services are on a case-by-case basis. Summer services are, you can do it depends on the child. So if it's on a case-by-case basis, your kid may only need a half a day. Another kid may need a whole day of services, the entire IEP. The school district can't predetermine what your child's summer program is going to be before they even make the decision. That's a predetermination based on their needs. That's illegal. It's not about them. It doesn't matter what they think. It doesn't matter what they say. It doesn't matter what they've been doing for years and years and years and years. The bottom line is, IDEA is not about them. It's not about the SPED director. It's not about the school superintendent or any of the teachers or any of the related service providers. Not about anybody. The only reason why you're meeting is because of your child. Your child and you are the most important people in that meeting. And do not let them make you think otherwise. You are the one in charge because you have more rights than they do. You have the federal regulations on your side. They don't want you to think that. The federal regulations protect your child and you from them. The only reason why the federal regulations were even enacted was because of public schools not doing their job. Those regulations don't work anywhere except for public schools. That's all it works. No place else does it work. So understand that the IEP development, you are to participate meaningfully. When they don't allow you to speak and when they don't allow you to participate, that's against the law, period. It's against the law. They can't do it. Okay? When you're developing the IEP, it's from soup to nuts. It goes right down to transportation. Yeah, I don't know if you know this, but transportation is actually a related service
Because guess what? If your kid can't get on that regular ed bus because there's too many kids, there's too many distractions, gets upset, gets nervous, starts throwing up, getting sick, and he's a hot mess by the time he gets to school or by the time he gets home, your kid can't ride that big ass bus. Oops. Your kid can't ride that bus. Your kid needs to ride a small bus with little bit of number of kids on it. Okay? And an aide maybe. And some, assistive technology to keep your child calm so he's ready to be able to access the general curriculum when he gets in the classroom. So that's why transportation is a related service. And here's the other thing. If your child can't get on the bus, then guess what your child's not doing? Your child can't access the general curriculum, can he? If your child won't go to school, how is your child accessing the general curriculum? That's why Congress put transportation as a related service. A related service is OT, PT, speech and language. It's a whole bunch of things. BCBA, ABA services. It's APA services. It's adaptive physical education services. Related services covers a lot. And if you really want to know what it is, it's under 34, C as in cat, F as in Frank, R as in rat, 300.34. Put that in there. Put that in there on your browser and it'll come right up. Okay, and then you'll see what related services are and what they entail. Don't let the school district say we don't do that. Good. Okay, good. So when they say they don't do that and they don't offer that, you say, okay, good. So you're not aligned with the federal requirements. Is that what you're telling me? This is how you have to talk to them. And they'll say, well, we don't, no. Okay, good. I'll tell you what, you put that in writing and I'll take it to the next level. And the next level is a complaint. Okay? They have to put it in writing. Whatever they tell you no to, they have to put in writing. They don't just get to say no. They have two things they can do. They can approve it and they can deny it. And if they deny it, they have to put it in writing. Even if they approve it, they have to put it in writing. But if they deny it, they have to put it in writing. They have to say why they're denying it. And believe me, they're not going to put because we don't offer that here. And like I said, the team includes you. You are part of the team. You're the parent. You're part of that team. And when your child turns 14, your child's a part of that team too. Yes, the child's a part of the team. You have to meaningfully participate, just like I said earlier. Meaningfully participating means you get input too. They don't just get to talk and make decisions. You get to ask questions. That's meaningfully participating. They have to answer your questions. They don't just get to say, well, we're going to move on. Move on to what? You didn't answer my question. That happened today too. Well, we're going to answer, and so we have a team meeting to discuss this. And then when I ask you a question, you say we have to have a meeting about my questions. And then I have another meeting. What? Because I asked you another question, we're going to have a meeting for that. No, that's a denial of your right to meaningfully participate. To have a meeting for you to ask questions. That's stupid. So when the IEP is done, they're going to send you what's called a draft. Usually they'll send you a draft. Never, ever, ever, ever. I don't care if the IEP is ready to be implemented. They wrote it up and everything. I don't care nothing about it. You need to take that IEP home because it's a lot to process. Okay, you need to take that IEP home and you need to read it over. Okay, you need to read it over. You need to make sure you understand everything. And if you don't understand something, you need to contact the school district and tell that SPED director you don't understand this. What does this mean? Send them an email. Don't reject it right away. Send it over to them. And rejecting it, if you don't have a spot to reject or accept, you can reject I'll tell you that in a minute, but you can reject the IEP, but don't do it right away. What you want to do is go back and forth with the school district. So if there's something that wasn't written right, that whatever is discussed at that team meeting has to be in the IEP. They don't get to say they're going to do something and it doesn't materialize in the IEP. So what I would suggest is that you tape record the meeting, in which a lot of time you have to ask permission. You have to tell them that you want to tape record the meeting. Okay? You have to give them the opportunity. They may say no. In Massachusetts, you can't do it if they say no. In New York, you can do it even if they say no. So you have to ask them and then put it in writing. Put it in writing to them and say, I want to tape record the meeting so that after the meeting I can review what was said and then match it up with your IEP, because that's what you're going to do. Don't tell them that, but say you want to review it. You want to review the meeting. It was a lot to take in one day. You want to review everything everybody said. Okay? And then, so 9 times out of 10, you do it, but it's a good thing to tape. It's a good thing to tape. It teaches you a lot about who said what, and it teaches you a lot about the players. So you want to do that. Now, as soon as the IEP is written, whether you sign it or not, that's why some states have signature pages and some states don't. The federal laws do not require that parents have to sign the IEP because it's effective immediately. As soon as it's written, it's effective. Whether you sign it or not, it's effective. So whatever you agreed to, whatever you didn't agree to, they have to write it up. If you don't agree with some parts of it, you put it in writing and say, we never talked about that. We're not doing none of that. I want that out of my kid's IEP now. And you write it up and you send them a nice little note and say, we didn't talk, we say it nice. And then you send it to them. And then if they don't take it out, then you say, I'm rejecting this part. I'm rejecting the IEP in part and I'm rejecting that part. We never discussed it, or we discussed it, but that's not what we discussed. For whatever the reason is that you don't want it in there, you send them the email and you tell them I want it out, or I don't want it in there, or I'm rejecting the IEP in part. And then you tell them what part you're rejecting. Then you tell them you want to have a meeting to discuss the parts that you're rejecting. Okay? Now in Massachusetts, and I don't know if there's other states, but I know in Massachusetts, their IEPs have a signature page, and they have 3 options. You can accept the IEP, the whole thing. You can reject the IEP, the whole thing, and you can reject it in part. The parts that you accept are effective immediately. Okay, I don't care what they tell you in Massachusetts. The parts you accept are effective immediately. They have to implement them. Okay, and on the bottom of the signature page, you check a box and it says that I want to have a meeting to discuss the parts that I rejected. So you check off that box and you go meet with them. You always want to meet with them. Okay, so because if anything goes down, if you have to file a complaint or you file for a hearing, you have documentation. You have a paper trail to show that you were trying to work with them. Okay, that you initiated all of this stuff. This will carry a lot of weight with the hearing officer or the State Department of Education to demonstrate that you were trying, and at every step of the way they were blocking you. Okay, there's some states where they've told parents, well, we only have 1 team meeting a year, or they limit the amount of team meetings. They put limitations on a lot of stuff. Nope, they can't do none of that. There's no limitations. There's no limitations as far as having team meetings or writing IEPs or writing amendments. If the kid needs it, if it has to be done, then it has to be done. That's what this is all about. It's about your kid, and it's about you. So I hope I explained it all. I hope I didn't leave anything out as far as what this was about. It wasn't very long, kind of short, but that's okay because I'm going to try to do this at least once a week. And then these will all pop up, and then you guys can just go and look at them all the time. So my name is Tammy Joya, and I'm an advocate. I've been doing this for years, years and years and years. I have a YouTube channel. It's called the Sped Answers Way, and as soon as I get 100 people in 30 days, I'll have my own, website YouTube channel that'll say Sped Answers Way. And I'm on Twitter at VSEATLJ. You can follow me on Twitter. And I also have a website, spedanswers.com, which I am currently updating. Or you could reach me at spedissues@yahoo.com. And if you did, could you just put in any emails that you sent to me that you have questions about the video on YouTube and which video it was, okay? I hope this helped you out. There's going to be more. It'll be in depth, and real soon I'm going to start doing live streaming. And the reason why I say real soon and I can't give you a date is because I just started this channel and I need 100 subscribers, and I'm in 30 days. So within 30 days, I'll be able to do it as long as I get 100 subscribers. So please subscribe to my channel, and I will try my best to give you guys as much information as possible. Thanks a lot for tuning in.